Hey folks, we are here at NG Atlanta. I'm here with my good friend Aimee Knight.
Hello.
Now you just got done speaking here at NG Atlanta.
Yep.
Style sheets, CSS.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. Like some people I talk to, and they're like, I'm really good at style sheets, and that's usually the minority. Everybody else is like,
Yeah. I'm still a little like that, but that's why I did the talk though, because I'm not at Warner Brothers anymore. I just recently left and started a new job, but I was at Warner Brothers for almost 2 years, and I always did, full stack JavaScript before that. And when I got to Warner Brothers, I was like, give me, something with JavaScript to do, and I'll figure it out. No matter what, I always can figure it out.
Right.
But hand me, something complicated with CSS, and I just felt like I was blindly throwing darts at a dartboard. Like, I felt helpless. And I was tired of that feeling. And, I did front end there. And when you work for a company like that, when you're off by a pixel, it matters. And we were always like being given like pretty complicated layouts to implement. And so, when I did like full stack JavaScript, it was always, as long as the JavaScript worked, that was the important part, as long as the functionality was there. But when they hand you these layouts and like you have to run them back through Warner Brothers, their designers before it's approved.
Wow.
Yeah, and it gets kicked back like multiple times. It wasn't like, you can't be like, yeah, this is a little difficult, so we're just going to like do it a little bit differently. And they're like, no, like it has to be this way. And so that's when I just decided to like really, really, really dig deep, because I'm also the kind of person, like I just really enjoy deep diving on things and understanding them from a very low level. So.
Right. Yeah, I remember the good old days. You'd get the pixel perfect, right? And
yes.
You send a screenshot over to the client or your boss or whatever, and they're like, "This looks great." And then the next day they come into your office and they say, "What did you do?" And I'm like, "What? Well, it doesn't look right anymore." And I pull it up on my machine. Yeah, it does.
And they're looking at a different browser.
They're in a different browser or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, because, even I think this was like a year and a half ago. Like Edge, quote unquote, said they fully supported Flexbox, but there were a couple like properties and stuff
quote unquote
that were not really supported. Same thing with like IE11 we had to support, but yeah, that's the other thing too. Like I find a lot of times, like, sure, it works great and like, my MacBook Pro, but when I like resize the screen and it has to be responsive for all these different breakpoints and stuff like that, like you really have to understand how to like design a fluid layout. And yeah, I wanted to make sure as a front end developer, my CSS skills matched my JavaScript skills. So.
Right. So I imagine some people are listening to this or watching this and going, yeah, that's pretty much where I come in. I hate that stuff.
Yep. I'm still not a huge fan, but at least I feel like now, if there's something that isn't working as I expected, I have a way of going about and figuring out what the problem is. And I understand. It's not just like blindly going about it. It's the like most frustrating feeling ever. As developers, like I don't want magic. I want to know what's going on.
Well, I want magic for the parts I don't care about.
Yes. The part that's abstracted away, so you don't have to repeat yourself.
But I completely agree. Before we get into more of your solutions and stuff, I do need to shout out to Progress for sponsoring my way here. They paid for my plane ticket and hotel, and they do some awesome stuff. If you want good looking elements that go on your page, go check out Kendo UI, kendoui.com, and yeah, great stuff.
The people at the conference are super nice. They're giving out cool T-shirts.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, do you want another one?
I think I'm good, but I got a couple to take home with me.
Yeah. So yeah, great stuff. So how do you? I don't know if the right question is learn to not hate style sheets, or at least learn to get by with them.
Yeah. So like I have a blog post if people want to take a look at that. I'm sure we can like include links and stuff like that, but. For me, like I think I did a Twitter poll and I asked people what the most, common issues that I saw, that they were having, and people usually get like tripped up on specificity, positioning, and Z-index. So that's the part I really like dove deep into. Like I'm shocked now, like when I give the talk, how many people, and myself included, before I did this talk, did not understand, how specificity is calculated. So there's that. I also know from like talking to different people, like depending on where you go interview, sometimes they'll ask you this as like an interview question. So I would think it's like, make sure you understand how it's calculated, because it's not magic. Like the browser it's code. So it's.
Oh, right. It's a program too.
Yes, exactly. Like, CSS is a markup language. It's not a programming language, but it's still code that the browser has to run.
Yep.
So it's not magic.
Nice. So how do you go about learning all this stuff?
So for me, there's just like tons of blog posts out there that I also dug into. There's a channel, it's called Blink On. So a lot of the research I did for my talk was based on Blink, which is it's Chrome's rendering engine. So they have this like Blink On, which is like an internal Google conference every year, but they post a lot of those videos. Now, I mean, this stuff is like really, really, really low level, but this is stuff like I loved. And so I was like, I dug into that for months on end. Also just spent a lot of time like understanding the developer tools better, because again, I just wanted to debug like I could my JavaScript. I think a lot of it, like I learned on the job, when I like hit stuff I didn't understand and I had to just figure it out. Like I also talk about in the talk, I think like, how do you learn, like make sure you're keeping up to date on your CSS skills and not just relying on your JavaScript skills, because, making sure your CSS is performant is important too. And I find, myself included, there's a lot of different ways to go about doing the same exact thing. And like Angular developers or JavaScript developers, like we're very quick to reach for JavaScript, and JavaScript can get the job done. But actually, a lot of times CSS is a more performant solution. And so it pays to understand how to do things in CSS as well. I still, it's really funny to me, a lot of the developers I was working with at Warner Brothers, they were, more design focused. And it was always funny, like, if we were each given a ticket, usually they would reach for the CSS solution, I'd reach for the JavaScript solution. And I had to learn that, a lot of times, although both got the job done, again, like I'm repeating myself, but the CSS solution was faster. So I had to learn that.
The thing that comes to mind for me is animations, right? The CSS animations are GPU accelerated. And the JavaScript solutions are re-rendering with your processor. And then there's like another part that I point out in the talk. So understanding like the render pipeline. So you do layout, paint, and composite. And, a lot of times people will like, I've seen people try to like get something off the screen by like giving a negative margin or something like that. But I've done that.
Like you want to, so paint is the most expensive component of that pipeline. And so it pays to understand like which properties to use. So if you're trying to like hide something, you would want to use opacity, because opacity just triggers composite. So you don't have to run layout and paint. So you would want to like set opacity to 0 to hide something if you can do that. So, yeah, I don't know. I wish I had a better way to answer the original question of, how did I, learn all this stuff? It was just like spending months of like digging into things.
No, that's fair. I mean, I think we all want the quick solution that's like, okay, upload, got it. Yeah. I'm a CSS pro, but nothing in life works that way.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if I had to summarize, like those Blink On videos are really good if you want a serious deep dive. But other than that, like keep up on your CSS skills. Make sure you understand Flexbox and make sure you're learning CSS Grid and,
Yep. So I have to ask, a lot of people kind of just chalk it up as, that necessary evil, or they chalk it up as, well, it's not really my job to know CSS.
Yep.
Do you feel like they're wrong?
I mean, it depends what your job description is. So, like I was actually just talking to a coworker I work with now, and they're interviewing a lot of different developers. And I was just saying, like when you're interviewing a front-end developer, it's not just about the JavaScript skills. There's like low-hanging fruit, like, not just can I, write code, but can I write semantic HTML? Can I actually like, do I actually know how to write CSS? Like, Do I understand how z-index works? Do I understand how specificity works? Like if you gave a developer in an interview, and this is not a trick question, but like I feel like any front end developer, you should be able to give them like a style role, and they should be able to tell you what the value is. like for a mid level to a senior role,
right.
You know, not necessarily junior. But then like. Not just like that, but even like some like diverging from the CSS stuff. But I can't tell you how many times like I'll open up Codebase and like I see text in divs, and I'm like, that is not what a div is for. Like you're supposed to use like a headline tag or a paragraph tag. Like stop using divs to contain your text. Like
come on.
It's just like low hanging fruit for people. So
it's
easy, good, easy stuff to start with.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, the other thing is as we come to understand more stuff about CSS, you've got, you mentioned Flexbox, but now we've got CSS grids.
Yep.
And, the more that I've dug into those, the more I'm just like, all the floating divs, this is way easier than that.
Yes, it is. It's so much easier when you learn it too. Like it can be a little bit fun. I still like JavaScript better, but.
Oh, I'm with you there. I'm just saying, writing off CSS is going to cost you in the long run, I think, because there are easier ways. And I'm, with CSS, I'll admit, I'm mostly in it for less headache as opposed to, more fun.
Yes, me too. Like, I just want to get my job done faster.
Right.
I want to get to the JavaScript tickets faster.
Yeah, and so, the less headache is the CSS grid. Sweet, let's do it.
Yes.
But I'm totally there with you. So what were you hoping people would get out of your talk?
I really hope people are, I'm not trying to like convince anybody to love CSS because, I keep saying I still like JavaScript better, but I'm hoping that people will at least like respect it.
Right.
Like I try to be fair and a nice person, and I don't like when people are like CSS is stupid, because like I don't think it's stupid. I think it serves a purpose, and you should understand what the purpose is. And so I hope that people will stop saying CSS is stupid, and I hope they'll understand like style or like component based styling. Like I talk about that in the talk too. Like I think that gets around a lot of specificity problems, but I know we've talked about this on JavaScript Jabber. Like you have to have an escape hatch to make sure you have like global variables, because that kind of stuff, that's what CSS is, like cascading style sheet. So, be careful too, not just to like always rely on, component based styling. Make sure you understand like the cascade and specificity and all that.
I agree. I mean, the component-based styling is definitely nice.
Yes, yes.
It makes a lot of things a lot easier to keep track of.
Yep.
But I mean, you have color schemes and general layout decisions that you make that, you don't need that in a component. You need that at the global level so that everything kind of falls in underneath it. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Well, cool. So what are you working on these days?
So no more like deep diving into CSS. Like I'm still writing CSS, but I'm back to doing full stack. I just started at a company like a week and a half ago. It'll be 2 weeks on Monday. I had to take 2 days off for the conference, but they were okay with it. Yeah. So the first half of this year, I'll probably still be digging into CSS a little bit more. I really there's something called Houdini that I know we've talked about a little bit on JavaScript Jabber, and I think
we've talking about on JavaScript Jabber.
Yeah, and I think there's actually a developer evangelist for Google that I reached out to that's going to come, and I think he's booked for JavaScript Jabber coming up. If he hasn't, he's going to.
Good deal.
So he's going to talk about Houdini. So I want to dig into that more and more, and like just for people not familiar, Houdini is like this task force that's coming together, and they're exposing a set of APIs so you can like hook into the rendering engine, which is what's parsing your HTML and CSS. So I want to like play with that more. So I'm going to probably spend like the first half of the year doing that kind of stuff. And then, I'm big on setting goals for myself. So I've mapped out like my next, year or so. But then I want to do like a complete 180 and like really dig deeper onto the back end. So like we've talked about this a little bit on JavaScript Jabber, but probably just focus on more back end stuff. And like I actually want to learn Rust. So totally unrelated Angular, but
yeah, but you have to keep learning, right?
Yep, exactly. So I'm hoping that it challenges me to do something completely different.
Yep. Well, I just want to let people know that if you want to hear more from Aimee, she is on JavaScript Jabber every week. Well, almost every week.
Yeah, I try to be.
And well, you could say that about most of us. I don't make it every week.
Yep.
But yeah, and then you're always out there in the community. It seems like
I try
doing talks and being involved. And
Yep. I try. Like I know a lot of people say it's hard to like scale help. But as somebody who is new and somebody who is kind of intimidated sometimes to reach out, I try to answer questions even if they come in like an email form and stuff like that. I try. Sometimes it gets hard and I can't and whatever, but I do try to help people if they reach out.
Cool. Well, it's cool. And I feel like the more people that do that, especially out in the open, the better resources we have.
Yep.
So
I try.
Awesome.
Speaking of, I have like so many emails I need to get to. So I'm sorry.
Nope, it's all good. So we will let's just go ahead and wrap this up.
Cool.
And let people know where to find you. You're at Aimee Knight?
Yep.
I can't remember.
It's AIMEE_Knight with a K on Twitter. Yep.
I know who you are when I see it, but yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks, Aimee.
Thank you.